Good evening. Good evening, Keren. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I will add a few things to a few words about Professor Keren Yarhi-Milo. You won't be surprised to hear that she's the first Israeli that is at the head of the at the Columbia University School of Public Policy, which is one of the most important schools that trains generations of diplomats and government officials. But no less impressive is that she's the youngest woman to ever serve in this position, and one of the objectives that she set for herself in this role is advancing women in governance and in other roles. And I definitely thank her for that. Yarhi-Milo is an expert in decision making during crises and political psychology. She's won awards and written many academic articles on the content. Last year, she launched at the university the Global Politics Forum, headed by the former Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State. It focuses on the connection between theory and practice when handling global challenges. Columbia, where we won't say how long ago she started working there. She went back to Columbia University after being a professor of political sciences, and she got her doctorate at Pennsylvania. We have not too much time, so I'm going to go to the right to the first question, Keren. At SIPA, you generally deal with global challenges facing humanity, like the climate challenge, technological revolutions, society and economy, and the future of liberal democracies and world order. We've convened here in order to talk about our provincial challenges here and our status in the world, particularly Israel's status in the United States at the time after the 7th of October, the BT Shari. So if I could maintain start to go into your personal perspective and how much the jolting events are felt in Colombia, in your immediate surroundings, and how much they affect the discourse at the university and the atmosphere there. First of all, thank you very much. And it's great to be with you here. This is my first time visiting since October 7th. And as you can definitely imagine, this caught, I've been in American academia for years. I came there in 2000. On the 7th of October, these events had a major influence on me personally, as somebody whose family lives here, as somebody who grew up here, of course, as somebody who researches international relations, intel, and decision making, and had written about it. There are a lot of things here that struck me as a researcher that who really wants to understand better and to study what's going on. And of course, as the dean of the international studies in the New York campus, as a deputy, I've never concealed my Israeli identity. So all the students know that I've served and I was in uniform and that I was in 8200. That was always part of my identity. And after the 7th of October, a lot of things that happened on campus, of course, turned me into a certain type of target, because it doesn't really matter what and why. It's just that there are many assumptions that people make about who you are. And however, there were also very tough things that happened. I'm sure that you've heard of some of those things, of the protests that occurred and all the events that we did with Secretary Clinton, which were not that were pretty serious, and they called us the supporters of genocide, and so on. But ultimately, at SIPA, we're talking about global challenges. Our work continues, and as much as we work on projects tied to the situation here and in the Middle East, there are still many other things that we're dealing with. The most important thing for me to say, perhaps, is that the opportunity and the platform that I have currently as a dean at this school, which is really one that trains the next generation of leaders. If you look at who the graduates are, and where those graduates end up, they are heads of state. They are foreign ministers. They really are the top. the very top. So therefore, the opportunity and the importance of what we are doing there at the universities, in the campuses, and in the school is very, very important. And here I really feel like I have the unique platform to do things and to say things and to get things out that could have an influence not just on the discourse but also hopefully on the impact and on the policy. So that is the arena. It's not a simple arena, but it's also a very important arena. Now, from your personal experience that you've told us a bit about, we'll go on to a systems analysis in an op-ed that you published in late December in the New York Times alongside your colleague in Princeton, Professor Amani Jamal, who is originally Palestinian. You write about the challenges of the toxic discourse right now. How is everything you described, how is it tied to the broader issues characterizing the academia in the United States and society there in general right now? And could you say a few words on how this could affect Israel and its relationship with the United States in the long term? So as you said, I'm the dean of the School of International Relations at Columbia, but I spent 10 years in Princeton. And Amani Jamal, the dean there, is a very good friend of mine, and she's the dean of the school in Princeton. After October 7th, both of us looked at what's going on our campuses, and we decided that the situation is truly hard, tough, and the discourse has really become very toxic. We sat down and talked and asked ourselves, why is this happening and what is really happening here? Then we understood that there are a few things that, when taken together, and some of this the academia is also to blame for. In other words, a vacuum, a very serious vacuum was created over the years in academia, where from its perspective, as she knows from her perspective and her own perspective, and I'm seeing this in Columbia too, that for many years we didn't teach the Israeli-Palestinian conflict the way we should have. Academia in the United States, because it is such an explosive topic and so problematic, it was more comfortable to it was very hard to find people who wanted to teach it, and those who wanted to teach it taught it through a very simple narrative that became very popular of colonialism and so on. But there isn't a lot of studying going on, not a lot of content and activity going on that gives background on the history of the conflict and so on. So therefore we said that we have to do more. We have to do better. We just have to. And we have to double down on this. And this is one thing that's happening. The other thing that happened is that we saw not ignorance, but a major misunderstanding of very basic things tied to the conflict. So I teach a course with Hillary Clinton. It's 400 students. The course is called Inside a Situation Room, about crisis decision making. And we saw that when we talked to students and when we talked to them about the Oslo Accords, they were puzzled. What is Oslo? What is Camp David 2? So there really is a problem that we need to talk about. There's also Generation Z, Gen Z on the campuses. It's very tough for this generation in the United States to have a discourse with people who they disagree with. It's very tough to discriminate between what it means being uncomfortable and being unsafe, and they're not the same thing. And we must teach our students there how to do this. How can you civilly disagree with one another? How can you have a real conversations? Because protests are not the answer. And this is something that has to be done across the board. We're working on this very intensely, and what she and I tried to do was to model this kind of civil disagreement, because we don't agree on everything, but it is very important to model it, because no one else does this modeling to our students. The society is very polarized, and this is something that, again, it's very important for us to do this, and we do this at SIPA, and this is what she and I tried to do. And the op-ed that we wrote in the New York Times got lots of positive feedback. They asked me to come back and give a lecture at 30 universities around the world because it was very important for people to show to see how this needs to be done. But we have problems there too, and that's also important because again, this is the next generation of voters and of leaders. But so what we're doing there is critical. And I really believe that there's also an opportunity here to understand that what's very different this time, there was always anti-Semitism, and so we saw protests on the campuses. That's not the same first time. But if people listen to the narrative, what are they chanting? What's going on there? It's not about two states. It's the narrative of a binational state. We don't want two states. We want all of it. And that is different. That clarifies the message that you talked about regarding what that means for Israel. That if nobody works here on the two-state solution, and if there is no path to reach that solution, that is something that the discourse there is no longer talking about. They're no longer talking about two states. And that is a danger. That's a very serious risk that I think we should and we must talk about. And it's not, we should be talking about this after the war. We should be talking about this now. And we should be talking about this honestly. Thank you. Our time is up. I would love to continue talking to you, but we'll have to do that next time. Thank you very much. Thank you.